on, and it's a beautiful journey. So I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my name is Kimball. Today, interesting subject had tapped on me yesterday. So I want to talk about a vision for you today. And it starts on page 151 of our amazing big book. I thank God for everybody that's here, and I pray that God keeps us focused on the program, practicing these principles in all our affairs, and carrying this message to other alcoholics. And in a vision for you, before I get started, Brother Dan, on page 151, if
Yep.
you will read the first two paragraphs.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, the first two paragraphs, and we'll get started.
Cool. Vision for you, chapter 11, everybody. For most normal folk, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colourful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is joyous intimacy with friends and feeling that life is good. But not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. The less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself. As we become subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, over becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did. Then would come oblivion, and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dan. No doubt. Vision for you is so good. For us real alcoholics, back in our early in our drinking careers, we could drink to be relieved from boredom. We could drink to have friends, right? Companionship, all kind of different things. We had a very colorful imagination. But then it points out a very serious point. But not so with us in these last days of drinking. The old pleasures were gone. I can remember the days when my drinking went from being fun until I could take it or leave it alone. And then I crossed the invisible line to where alcohol was the number one thing in my life, and I had to have it. And then I drank it for so long that it wasn't working anymore. It basically quit working. It seems like I was in a point, tell you the truth, I was in a point of hopelessness. And I'm sure we all done experienced that, because nothing was fun anymore. And then in my case, I was suffering from depression, and I was drinking, and it made me more depressed. Then I became very ill. I was beating myself up because I couldn't stop myself from drinking. So never could we recapture the moments from the past. It was gone. And it happens when we cross that line, like I was talking about. There was an insistent yearning for enjoying life, right? And as we once did, we no longer could enjoy life the way we did before. I can remember the days of misery, the days of crying, beat myself on the head, beat myself on the face in the mirror. So, man, what is wrong with you? You got to do something. I was at the point of alcoholic death. But then there was always one more attempt and one more failure. Well, we know on page 34, it talks about the baffling feature of alcoholism. It's the utter inability to leave it alone. And also it takes me to page 23 and page 30 in our big book. I'll give you a short note on that. So here on page 23, it goes on to read. I lost my page. Okay. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. but they often suspect they are down for the count. So the game that we was trying to beat, we was trying to stop drinking on our own, always thinking we can have control. Well, maybe when I drink tomorrow, I'm already planning on drinking tomorrow, right? That's the alcoholic obsession that we alcoholics had. So we obsessed with ourselves. Well, I can do this. I don't need no help. But that was a big lie that we told ourselves in our head. So in the book, on page 23, it says, some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. But in their hearts, they really don't know why they do it. So true. Yes. I couldn't live without alcohol, and it got to the point to where I could not live with alcohol. So here on page 30, if you will, you can flip to page 30, and it goes on to say, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. Now, this part of step one, right? We alcoholics suffer from what, Bill describes it as a mental obsession. And then it turns in, we describe it as being the malady. The problem of the alcoholic is centers in his mind rather than in his body. And then the second symptom for being a real alcoholic is the phenomenon of craving, better known as the allergy. When we take one drink, we activate this allergy and then we cannot stop. So then when that phenomenon kick in, we are craving. And we're craving beyond a mental obsession. It's beyond a mental perception, and we can't stop it. When that craving kicks in, there's no cutting it off. Unless of course, you black out. But blacking out ain't good, because a blackout, we walk around in a blackout not being aware of what we're doing. We don't remember things. Or unless we pass out, go to sleep, go to jail, get locked up, or whatever it is. That's the only way I could stop my drinking. If I ran out of money, somebody's gonna give me some money, because I was gonna hunt it till I found it. I don't care if it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I used to call my boss man 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, wake him up. Man, I need some money. I'm out of whiskey. He'll get up and give it to me. I drive to his house, pick it up, and come back. Because that alcohol, I never wanted that feeling to stop once I started. Because that was that craving deep within me. But then I want to make this point here very clear. When it's talking about this obsession, it says the idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. No doubt. An idea. See where the idea come from? It comes from the mind. That's where the problem centers in the mind. So we have fixed ideas. Shoot, I can control it, man. After this drunk here, I'm gonna control it the next time. Shoot. Then we try what we call control drinking. We are gonna I'm gonna take 2 or 3, and then I'm gonna stop. Shoot, I never could when I crossed that line. Nope. But then the persistence of disillusion is astonishing. Many pursued into the gates of insanity of death. Notice it mentions the word illusion. Shoot, I don't know about y'all, but I lived in this illusion for 40 years. Because I became, from my experience shows me, I was a real alcoholic 2 years after I took my first drink, and it continued for the next 40 years. I was living in an illusion. I thought I had to have alcohol at all costs. And I did. I didn't care what I had to do, what went on, I had to have it. Reminds me of something on page 8, what Bill Wilson has said. Alcohol had became my master. Wow, no stopping now. When something becomes the master over you, we are in trouble. But then on Vision for You, Bill Wilson came up with these ideas back when he was back in the hospital, back in town hospital. So, Brother Dan, if you will, I would like to read the short reading in the doctor's opinion. Very first page, as a matter of fact. Let me roll over to it.
Roll on back.
Page X.
XX.
Page XXV. I want you to start with to whom it may concern.
Yeah.
and stop down there at where it says appear to have recovered. We'll cover that short one.
Cool, cool.
Mhm.
XXV, to whom it may concern. I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning the possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered.
Okay, thank you, Brother Dan. No doubt. So here, Dr. Silkworth gave Bill Wilson the grave nature of his alcoholism. You know, Bill made several trips in and out this hospital. Dr. Silkworth considered to be a medical saint, and we all need to thank God. I thank God for Dr. Silkworth. He worked with over 40,000 of people like us, the real alcoholic. So, but anyway, the businessman he's talking about here on XXV is Bill Wilson, right? The doctor regarded him as hopeless. That brings me back to step one as well. You know, we are powerless over this alcoholism, right? We are all in a hopeless state of mind and body. The doctor seen this in Bill Wilson. When an alcoholic hopeless, there's nothing we can do, nothing anybody else can do, nothing that human power can do. So Bill was getting concerned with these ideas. So the ideas he was talking about was a possible means of recovery from alcoholism, you know, as part of his rehabilitation. So Bill seen early that he had a message he needed to carry to help another alcoholic. That was keeping him sober, and then it would help get another alcoholic sober. And this basically is the starting point, almost the starting point. I get to the starting point of AA in just a minute, though, because the paragraph brings out this has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man, Bill Wilson, and over 100 others appear to have recovered. You know, I have a lot of disputes in my recovered alcoholics group page. They tell me, you don't never recover, you recovering. So I direct them to the title page where it says Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. They just can't seem to get the message. The message starts on this very title page. So that's what was in Bill Wilson's mind. Carry this message. And then we'll talk about where Bill got the message from and how he acquired these ideas in just a moment. But I want to stay on page 151. Back to page 151. It says the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society and life itself. People was getting to the point where they didn't want to be around us. Shoot, no, we would come in the big bar or steal or whatever we could to get another darn drink, right? We treated people bad. So they'd be like, imagine like in a bullfight, right? You in the big arena, the bull get loose and you run in the crowd disperse. That's the way it was in my drinking career. They see me coming, but they better disperse. So somebody was finna catch some heck from me. See me walking sideways and backwards and stuff, they were gonna scatter. Most of the people would. My family put up with me sometimes. I laugh at my daughter today. She's like, get in that car and take your drunk butt home. We joke about that today because every time I came around, I was lit up, toe up from the floor up. So as we became subjects of king alcohol, shivering denizens of this mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. No matter how much I drank in my drinking career, at this point, loneliness and depression was always there. Always. Drinking, you know, drinking is a depressant, right? So loneliness set in. Depression set in. The world seemed like it was black. So some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval, right? Momentarily we did. Then will come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen. I don't know if y'all know about them four horsemen. We're going to talk about that for a minute. Because I knew these jokers here, but they were my best friend. Shit, I get on their horse by George and we would ride. We go to the rodeo and we would ride that thing. So they are terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. So unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. So we all who have suffer from alcoholism, we dealt with these things, these four doggone horsemen, man. Man, I tell you now. So it talks about a little terror here. Now, that they used to go out on the darn bends. How often we used to feel today after a good old drunk, after a good old binge. Sometimes my binges would last for 6 or 8 months straight. So we wondering how we could possibly act like we did. Because when people start, my family stuff start relating the things that I did, I'm like, I couldn't possibly did that. I don't even remember that. Shoot, man, what you talking about? But then I did. Sometimes it used to get recorded, right? So then I had proof. I had evidence. I remember years ago in the military, but I was in oblivion one night at one of my friends' house. And they recorded me on the video. I'm all on the floor, just drunk and talking and cussing and just acting a fool. But I really did act like that. Wow. So I knock it off, right? Then I say, well, I'm going to do better next time. I'm going to quit, right? Shoot, you messed around, let me get up off that floor. I'm going to get a drink right then. Shoot, to start the same vicious cycle all over again. So there may be instances where you're scared that we may have scared ourselves when we were driving, or, driving while drinking and falling under a blackout. So we can't remember what we said or did, right? These instances can lead to a road of terror. Well, I used to be terrified because I can share this right here, another one of my personal experience. I took my son when he was 2 years old to a club. Under my arms in a club, a nightclub, right? It's a little bit of hole in the wall thing. I was in Louisiana then, down in Fort Polk, Louisiana. I remember taking him to the club. I woke up several hours later. I'm in the driveway at my house. My son sitting beside me. I'm sitting behind the driver's seat, wondering how in the world did I get him? I had no idea. That brought a terror up on me, man. It brought the terror up on my wife too, but she wanted to kill my butt, and I don't blame her. They had no business taking that boy to the club, no doggone way, right? So, but that was the cue. And I still couldn't see the problem, right? I was gonna try it again. But I was too scared to try it again because I didn't want to put my son in no more danger. He was already in enough danger with me being around the house, being a darn drunk all the time. But then bewilderment, right? Another day after hard drinking, right? Totally bewildered, baffling. How could I not stop when I tried to? I thought I could control this stuff. So we bewildered because we can't control the amounts we take. And then we can't control how we act after we drank so much. So, and it's something, it's, like I said, it's really baffling. Okay. So then talk about a little frustration. An alcoholic, we may feel frustrated because, again, our attempts to control our drinking, they kept falling short. And in the doctor's opinion, it talks about this is repeated over and over again, right? And unless a person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. That's the solution for our alcoholism, peeps, a psychic change. In the spiritual experience, it talks about the personality change sufficient enough for us to recover from alcoholism. So parts of our lives, they were frustrating as well. She put this thing in my bag. So relationships was a problem. Jobs was a problem. Everything in our lives was a problem, and we were frustrated by it. because we didn't have another drink, right? So that's terrible. Then a little bit of despair, right? So suffering from alcoholism, it can lead us into a state of hopelessness. Because that stuff was in control of our lives, right? And then we can't stop. Boom. Then we can fall into this hopeless state. Look, Lord, what can I do? How can I stop this mess? So we fail over and over and over again. And that causes a lot of sadness. You know, that can cause us alcoholics to fall into sadness, depression, misery, all of that good stuff. Broken relationships, loss of jobs, that can add to our despair because we walking around being a train wreck. And we can't even see it, right? But then when we see people start leaving our lives, we see we can't do no job, we can't pay our bills no more and things like that. That's a bad place for an alcoholic to be in. I was at that lowly spot. Shoot, I didn't want to live and I didn't want to die. Now that's a heck of a place to be at. Because if I kept living, I was gonna keep drinking. And if I died, I wouldn't be able to drink, right? That's a little bit of what we call fear, right? Something like that. So, but anyway, thank God for the solution that this program has offered to us. So, do any of these bedevilments, they seem pretty, these four horsemen, do they seem familiar with any of us? I'm going to share a list of these bedevilments on page 52. Then we'll move on because I've spent too long on one page. But this program excites me so much. God set this fire up under me to carry this message. And I love to carry this message. So on page 52, okay, in the middle of the page, on page 52, we had to ask ourselves why we should apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. Now, here come these bedevilments we were talking about. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be a real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it would. So these bedevilments afflicted all of us in some way. Now, but then a solution for these bedevilments. Back on page 152, in the middle of the page, it says, yes, there is a substitute and it's vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. Thank God for this fellowship. Now, this fellowship was started back in 1935. Bill Wilson was pacing around in that doggone hotel lobby. Business deal had fell through. He was looking at the bar and then he was looking at the telephone booth, right? Wondering what he could do. He had only been sober like 6 months at this time. So, Bill suffered from depression even back then. He's been suffering from depression most of his life. So, he had that thought. A drink will fix everything. With 6 months sobriety, he already seen the problem. He's seen the solution. He's seen he had took the course of action. And he know he must not drink. But thank God, God restored his sanity that night. He got on the phone and he got in touch with Dr. Bob. Let's make the first meeting of one alcoholic talking to another. And this is what started the AA program of recovery. Thank God. And he met Dr. Bob through Henrietta Sieberling. Both of these were members of the Oxford group, just like Ebby Thatcher. He was a member of the Oxford group who came to bring Bill certain ideas. Ebby told Bill he had found God. He had found religion, exactly what he said. Bill wasn't a religious fanatic. He was kind of agnostic at the time. He always believed in God, but he just think he could do nothing for him. But anyway, that talk at that table really helped Bill. So Bill went back to Towns Hospital shortly afterward, and that's when he had his white light experience. He recovered from alcoholism. So he brings this vision for us today. It's a vision for all of us. Oh, man. So then on page 153, it mentions about the age of miracles is still with us. Our own recovery proves that, right? So the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The Oxford group had like several tenets, 6 tenets of the Oxford group. It's similar to the steps, but Bill Wilson, by the time he published this book, he came up with the 12 steps. And people wanted to argue with him about that. There's too many of this and too many of that. But anyway, the 12 steps became the solution for our alcoholic problems. It simply solves all our problems. So then on page 153, he relates, our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize up on it to follow its suggestions. Yes, and the suggestions that it put in there, on page 58, right, it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. So Bill and his first 100 men and women, they laid the path for us. We don't need to take away from it. We don't need to add to it. We simply follow the path. The path is the simple kit of spiritual tools that they laid out in this book. And then it goes on to relate on page 153. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. There is no way out of alcoholism unless we can take these 12 steps. I tried every other thing in the world to fix my own alcohol problem, and it never worked. Only the 12 steps worked, and it gave me that vital spiritual experience, psychic change, a spiritual awakening, whatever you may want to call it. And then on page 154, it talks about Bill in the hotel lobby. I talked a little bit about that. 155, still talking about the same thing. But a little bit about that talk. Dr. Bob agreed to see Bill for like 15 minutes. They ended up talking, I think, 5 hours? And then on page 155, it goes on. Bill says, when our friend related his experience, the man related. Now, this is another situation. I want to read that anyway, because it's part of the study today. So when our friend related his experience, the man agreed that no amount of willpower he might muster could stop his drinking for long. A spiritual experience, he conceded, was absolutely necessary, but the price seemed high upon the basis suggested. Yeah, you know what? The price is simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness and other things, right? That's a high price to pay. Because, we alcoholics, we so self-centered. That's the highest price we have to pay. The defeating of self was it what life was all about for us. So the doctor told how he lived in constant worry about those who might find out about his alcoholism. Well, people pretty familiar with us alcoholics. They pretty much know what we drinking and how we drinking. We think they might not know, but they know. They really do. They just might not say nothing to us, right? But they know. Now, Dr. Bob was a surgeon, right? I'm sure the people he was working on, they don't smell alcohol or something fun on his breath. So they know. But we clobbered with this obsession, right? Because the paragraph brings out. He had, of course, the familiar obsession that few knew of his drinking. See, that's another obsession with self. Well, they don't know I drank. They don't know I drank this much. They don't know I'm drunk when I'm taking something out their body. Shoot, they don't have no idea. Them people probably were scared to death. Had no how to be. So, but we always thought, didn't nobody know but us. So then later on 155, being intrigued, however, he invited our friend to his home. So sometimes later, and just as he thought he was getting control of his liquor situation, he went on a roaring bender. This is talking about Dr. Bob still. He went on this roaring bender, the bender to end all benders. It's quite an exciting experience right here. You know, he stayed sober for a minute, right? But then that bender topped it all off. So his date of sobriety is June 10th, 1935. The meeting that Bill and Bob had would be Mother's Day, May the 12th, 1935. It was like 3 weeks later, right? He drank again while on a trip to attend a medical convention. So his last drink was June 10th, 1935. No doubt. Uh, wow, that's that alcoholic obsession, right? We get a little dry spell, and so we go back and think, shoot, we can take us a drink now. It ain't gonna hurt. We were testing that stuff. I knew I didn't think it would hurt me either, but it did. Shoot, when I take that doggone brain, tell me, man, look, you've been sober for 6 days. You fixed now. Go get you a drink. Shoot, I go get that drink. Next thing you know, it's oblivion. Be done told me up, and I'm drunk again, roaring through people's eyes like that tornado that the big book talks about. But however, on the bottom of page, bottom of page 55. So for him, this was the spree that ended all sprees. Thank God Dr. Bob got sober, no doubt. So he saw that he would have to face his problem squarely, that God might give him mastery, no doubt. There's them two there behind Brother Rob, Bill and Bob, our AA co-founders. Oh, yes. So here's a little bit more about Dr. Bob on page 156. It says, one morning he took the bull by the horns and set out to tell those he feared what his trouble had been. Making amends at this point, right? So he went here and did a fear inventory and all this good stuff, I'm pretty sure. So he got the balls to go out and face these people. Like we have to do the same thing in the process. Today we got 4-step worksheets, right? We can fill out. We got a fear inventory. So whatever we fear, boom, we could face it. We could put these things on paper. Just like our defects, the hurts, the harms, our conduct, the harms we cause others. So then Dr. Bob goes on to relate, or Bill goes on to relate about Bob on 156. He found himself surprisingly well received and learned that many knew of his drinking, right? They already know he was drinking, just like us. We think the people that we hurt didn't know we was drinking. We thought they didn't know about our drinking and how much we were drinking. They might have didn't know how much, but they knew something was terribly wrong with us. There's no doubt about it. So stepping into his car, he made the rounds of people he had hurt. He trembled as he went about, for this might mean ruin, particularly to a person in his line of business. Once again, Dr. Bob was a surgeon. So yes, he was scared because it might have ruined it. They might have took his doctor license, right? Well, we don't need a drunk, a practicing alcoholic, being a doctor. He might kill somebody on the operating table. But then, here's a great point. At midnight, he came home exhausted, but very happy. He has not had a drink since. Wow. Dr. Bob stayed sober until his death. They had another encounter with the man on the bed. Because he would become known as alcoholic number 3, Bill Dawson. So his sobriety date was June 26, 1935. He didn't have another drink for the next 19 years that he did. Now, this was a situation like mine. He was in the hospital 8 times in 6 months. I got a record like that. It went on for about 10 years in a row. I was always in and out the VA hospital up there. Ambulance ride. Every time I get out, another month later, I'm on the ambulance again. They take me back up there on that crazy floor, that psych ward up there. And then they keep me in the hospital. I dry out, only to come out and do the same thing again. Now, this guy, Bill D., he was once a well-known lawyer in the town. You know, we got Dr. Bob, was a great physician. Now we got a lawyer. So alcoholism don't care who you is, what your job status is, what your race, color, creed, institution, or organization is. Alcoholism affects anybody in the world. So it goes on to relate on page 157. Hopelessness was written large on the man's face as he replied, "Here's another hopeless alcoholic." Like Dr. Silkworth seen Bob as hopeless. Bill, he seen Bill Wilson as being hopeless. Same with Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob was in that hopeless condition. We alcoholics. I know I was in that hopeless position for a long time, right? I couldn't do nothing about it on my own. Well, no, I always thought I had that obsession myself. I can fix myself. That was obsessing with self, idolizing self, right? But then he goes on to relate. Oh, but that's no use. Nothing would fix me. I'm a goner. The last 3 times I got drunk on the way home from here. I'm afraid to go out the door. I can't understand it. Very familiar with that. Like I say, every time I left that VA hospital up there, I was drunk before I made it down here to my hometown. But my VA hospital is like an hour away from my house over the year. Many, many trips. I never left the hospital after an extended period of time and made it home without being drunk. Always. As soon as they let me out the hospital, they give my discharge papers, going straight to that store because that obsession, that mental malady, it took over my mind. So I had to drink. So the man in the bed, page 157 still, the man in the bed was told of the acute poisoning from which he suffered, how it deteriorates the body of an alcoholic and warps his mind. There was much talk about the mental state preceding the first drink. See, it talks about deteriorating the body, right? That's what happens with the allergy. Alcohol, we take that drink, we get that phenomenon of craving, then we can't stop, and years after doing it, it starts damaging our bodies. Sometimes it may not take a lot of years. Alcohol damages every organ in the body. I didn't know that till I was taking up these medical classes back when I was drinking. I found this out, but that wasn't enough to stop me from drinking. I still went and drank. Well, let me damage this organ. Let me damage that one, because I didn't have a solution, right? And then it warps his mind. And once again, the problem with the alcoholic is centers in his mind rather than in his body. It talks about this mental state preceding that first drink. So let me share with you the best example of the mental state found on page 37 in our big book. Matter of fact, I'm going to go back to the bottom of page 36 and where it reads in italics. It says he had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if he only mixed it with milk. That is quite a foolish idea. I don't even like the taste of milk, much less than put my alcohol in some milk. That is an insane idea. But then it says, the point I want to get to, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. That it is plain. The insanity precedes the first drink. So how can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Well, this insanity, it comes in the mind. I always had this insane idea. Shoot, it's okay for me to drink. Ain't nothing gonna happen. That's an insane idea because I already know I'm gonna cut the food once I get started drinking. And then it goes on to say, you may think this is an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. For this thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always. Now I got this highlight circle many times around the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity, how could it have happened? See, our sound reason, our willpower, none of that is enough to take us from that first drink. We alcoholics, we are without defense against that first drink. Our defense must come from a higher power. Yeah, no doubt. It's got to come from something greater than me. Shoot, my only defense was to take another drink. Man, that's pretty insane right there. Knowing I'm gonna just cut up when I get that drink. But then I want to go to page 158. First full paragraph, I go through that. Next day found the prospect more receptive. He had been thinking it over. Maybe you're right, he said. God ought to be able to do anything. Then he added, he sure didn't do much for me when I was trying to fight this booze racket alone. When we fight the booze racket alone, we are still being selfish. We are being self-reliant. So that's why I was baffled with alcoholism all those years. I was still relying on self. Self. That's what it was all about. I can fix my own problem. I don't need y'all people to fix my problem or show me how to fix my problem. So on the third day, it goes on to say the lawyer gave his life to the care and direction of his creator and said he was perfectly willing to do anything necessary. Page 58, we become willing to do whatever it takes, for us to recover from alcoholism. We do anything we can. His wife, scarcely daring to be hopeful, though she might have saw something different about her husband already. So he began to take the steps, right? He had begun to have a spiritual experience. Man, that's the solution for alcoholism. I reiterate that over and over. The 12 steps will lead us to this spiritual experience or spiritual awakening. So that afternoon, he put on his clothes and walked away from the hospital a free man. Wow. You know what he did in the hospital, though? Same thing. On page 158, he says, but he had found God, and in finding God, he found himself. That was June 1935. He never drank again. No doubt. Never drink again. So page 159 says, it goes on to read the first full paragraph. All this time, our friend at the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. He was there 3 months. We talking about Bill Wilson at Dr. Bob's house, right? He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, Dr. Bob, the lawyer, Bill D., and the devil-may-care chap. I forget his name. But these men have found something brand new. Brother Rob knows his name. But these men found something brand new in life, though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober. That motive became secondary. See, they know they must help other alcoholics to remain sober. Back at the beginning of the meeting, the first page, the doctor's opinion, when Bill was in the hospital, he acquired certain ideas of a program of recovery. Yes. So then I'll switch on. I'm going to fly on the page 160, no doubt. Page 160. Okay. In the middle of the page, it says, many a man, yet days from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. No doubt about it. They found God, in other words. So back then, they was taking alcoholics in their homes. The home they was in was T. Henry Williams' home. His wife's name was Clarice. So they was taking these alcoholics in their home. They met, they fellowship. So, boom, they found something good in there. I'm pretty sure not everybody recovered, just like it is today. Today there's over 2.1 million alcoholics in the fellowship. How many that have recovered, we don't know. But the 12 steps is the solution to recover from alcoholism. So, page 161 goes goes on to read. But life among alcoholics is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals, cleaning up old scrapes, helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other when justified. These are everyday occurrences. No one is too discredited or is sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. Yes. Some key things right here. Dr. Bob frequently says, trust God, clean house, help others, right? Trust God, step 1, 2, 3. Clean house, steps 4 through 10. Help others. 11 and 12. There you go, Brother Gary. Thank you so much. Yes. I almost had a brain cramp there for a minute. Page 162. Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. To some extent, this is already true. To some extent, this was becoming true back in 1939 when the AA was spreading out. Now this is very true. We can tune in to Alcoholics Anonymous today on Zoom. 24 hours a day, you can find a meeting somewhere in this format that we have today. There are a lot of meetings a lot more meetings today than there was back in 1939. Because back then, it was meetings, say, maybe once a week. There we go, to modem to modem. Yeah. So I'm going to journey on to page 164. This is some of my favorite readings in the book right here. So it says on page 164, and Brother Dan, then we'll get ready to clear out. And it came out just about right on time. So where it says our book is meant to be suggestive only, page 164. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us, for all of us. And this is the vision that we have today. This vision that they printed in this book is for all of us today, man. It is very important. So the last paragraph reads, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank God for the solution to us real alcoholics. And then that'll conclude the meeting. So thank you, Brother Dan, for being my fabulous co-host as always. And I thank everybody for being here on this joyful, happy, and free Sunday, free from the bondage of self and free from alcoholism. Shoot, I'm a happy camper, man. You can't beat it with a stick. I get a chance. Hey, all right. So thank you, everybody.
Cool. You don't sound very happy there, Campbell.
I am, brother. Yes, no doubt. It's better every day.
Thanks for that, brother. Absolutely great one again today. Thank you. Tradition 7 information and Keystone meeting information has been put in the chat, and the link to the YouTube channel where this and all the other audios have been put, and my email address for the list of other Keystone meetings. There's too many to list in there. So that leaves me to finish off. Thanks for a great meeting, and to finish the formality side of it before I allow everyone to be unmuted for any questions with the step 3 prayer. So please follow along. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will.
Take away my
Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help